this is not just an idea, it's real. I can pay for a pad thai, do some shopping, and grab a tuk-tuk with a Singapore bank app while I'm sitting in Thailand using local QR codes. India, by the way, is live too, though it's a little bit more clunky of an experience. It's getting better. And I just tend to use my Google Pay app.
Not just the part Thai piece of it, but the payments piece. The US.
I knew I had you at pad Thai. Welcome back to A to Z, the podcast where we break down the world of finance, tech, and payments, one letter at a time. I'm Aman.
And I'm Zubin. And holy smokes, episode 10. Aman, I can't believe we've recorded 10 episodes so far. That's a massive milestone, a big one. And since we're at number 10, we couldn't help resist drawing on football, or soccer as we call it on my side of the world. In that world, the 10 jersey is worn by the greats. Pele, Maradona, Zidane.
And in payments, the number 10s are national rails. They're the Playmakers, the ones that set the tempo and keep the whole economy connected.
Before we dive in, a quick disclaimer. This podcast is for information and entertainment purposes only. Our views are our own, not of those organizations that we're affiliated with. And of course, this is not financial advice. We're just two dudes riffing. Now, with that out of the way, let's get into it.
So today we are focusing on two of the best. UPI in India, our Messi, consistent, masterful, unrelenting. And PIX in Brazil, our Neymar, fast, flashy, transformative.
So let's start with UPI. UPI has gone from zero to about 20 billion transactions a month in under a decade. And it's integrated everywhere. So think bank apps, GPay, WhatsApp. And to put things in perspective, that's greater than Visa processes globally.
You know, Zubin, the genius is in its design. UPI is open, it's interoperable, and it's inclusive. Everyone, banks, fintechs, regulators, even you and I once upon a time, plays on the same level playing field.
That's right, Aman. And let's shift gears. Let's talk about PIX for a second. Launched in 2020, already about 200 million users, just unbelievably phenomenal growth.
True, and a little bit more top-down than UPI, driven by the central bank, but equally impactful. It's reduced fees, it's pushed cash to the sidelines, and given merchants and consumers instant settlement.
That's right. Different styles, both world-class. Let's just call it Messi, the orchestrator, Neymar, the spark. But together they've shown what happens when rails are essentially public infrastructure. Inclusion rises, innovation thrives, and of course, costs collapse. But Amar, I've been thinking about this, and you've explained UPI like it's messy. But when I think about it, you're like the Beckham of banking. Pinpoint delivery, a bit stylish, but of course, never won the 10.
I don't know, Zubin, it's a bit harsh, but also a bit fair. Actually, Zubin, 7 is the new 10. Ask Cristiano Ronaldo. As a Man U fan, I'll take Beckham any day, and I'll take his bank balance.
Of course.
My wife might take his devastating good looks, but I digress. Before we go on the world tour, Zubin, let's be clear about what we mean by national rails, because it's a phrase everyone uses and is bandied about, but not everybody understands the technical side of it.
Good point, Aman. And people often call UPI or PIX the rails, but technically they're just the application layer. The actual rails sits underneath that. In India, that's the IMPS. In Brazil, it's the SPI. And what you're really referring to as rails in UPI and PIX is really a stack of regulatory standards and technical infrastructure that put together build up the success of what it is.
You know, Zubin, I feel a framework coming on. I think it's time for Prof Z.
All right, okay, but only if you insist.
Here's what really makes UPI and PIX world-class. The first is the R. It's the real-time banking rails. This is really the foundation. In India, that's the IMPS or the immediate payment systems. In Brazil, it's the SPI or the instant payment systems. Think of them as the train tracks that let money move instantly between banks. Second is the authentication framework, and this is really the security layer. Now, both systems, in this case, both UPI and PIX, have really strong two-factor checks. Your app is essentially tied to your device. There's device binding that happens out there, and every transaction requires a PIN, password, or biometrics. So that means that even if your phone is compromised, your money isn't. The third piece to this is the D, or the universal directory. This is what makes payments simple. Instead of long account numbers, you use easy aliases. In India, with the UPI, that's the virtual payment addresses, or the VPAS, which could be either your phone number or a QR code. In Brazil, PIX uses chavis. And for you Indians out there, chavis really in this case is Portuguese for keys, which is where we get it from. Again, in this case, it could be your email, phone, or a tax ID. And directories are evolving. UPI is already even testing out tap and pay, which basically your alias could just be your tap on your phone at checkout. And here's the important piece. Lots of countries already have that R, which is the real-time banking rails. The UK have faster payments, the US has FedNow, Europe has SEPA instant credit transfers. Most of them don't yet have that consistent authentication framework. And I think in almost all of the cases, that universal directory, or the D, isn't built in. That's what really makes UPI and PIX feel so seamless. They deliver that full stack. So that's the RAD framework, R for real-time banking rails, A for authentication framework, and D for that universal directory. Get all three right, and you've got a true number 10 with your banking rails.
Zubin, truly fascinating, and a masterclass once again from Prof. C. Okay, let's flip through the global sticker book, if you'd like, of number 10s and see how they all stack up. If there's one region that shows that national rails can do it, it's Asia.
That's right. Let's start with Thailand's PromptPay. And no one's really been talking about this, but PromptPay launched in 2016 and at the time was one of the fastest growing payment rails in the world. Today, it has about 90% population coverage, about 81 million registrants. And as we were researching for this episode, we were reading through it. And I think in March alone, it processed about 2 billion transactions worth about 4.4 trillion baht. Putting that in perspective, that's about, in US dollars, about 36 billion in value. Now, that's world-class scale.
It truly is. Another one is Indonesia's QRIS, new kid on the block, relatively speaking, rolled out in 2019. It's already at 57 million users and 32 million merchants. Most of them are small businesses, Zubin. With the population in Indonesia, over 270 million, QRIS could grow into a full stack system to rival UPI or PIX in the next couple of years.
Spot on. And sort of add to that, Malaysia's Do It Now, Vietnam has NAPAS, UAE's ANI, and you got Australia NPP. There's a common theme. It's countries see rails as sort of national infrastructure.
True. But the real game changer in this is interoperability. I think Singapore is leading here. Its PayNow system is already linked to PromptPay in Thailand, UPI in India, Do It Now in Malaysia, and even QRIS in Indonesia.
And you're right, Aman. Again, it's not stopping. You saw Singapore sort of spearheading the ASEAN Regional Payment Connectivity Initiative, which, I think we were looking at this sort of now includes, I think, Philippines, Vietnam, Cambodia, I want to say even Brunei and Laos.
Laos, yeah. Today, essentially, these are mostly bilateral connections, one country to another. But the next step is a multilateral one. And that's where BIS's project Nexus is all about that, right? It's aspiring to create a global network of instant payment systems. If Nexus succeeds, PayNow could one day not just connect you across ASEAN, but connect people like me sitting in Singapore to Europe, Africa, even the Americas.
Yeah, and to sort of summarize this, Asia is showing the world how national rails evolve. You start with sort of domestic dominance, then you sort of have regional linkage, and hopefully eventually create this global network.
And beyond the Asian big names like UPI and PromptPay, there's a whole new wave of rails emerging, right, Zubin?
Absolutely, absolutely. And again, as we were researching this, Pakistan's Ras, you had Philippines PesoNet or Instant Pay, all early and ambitious, designed to pull millions into digital payments and financial.
And in Africa, progress is being powered by Mojaloop. It's an open source standard backed by the Gates Foundation. It's already live in countries like Tanzania, Rwanda, Gambia, giving them a really strong common blueprint for the instant low cost payments and the network effect we talked about earlier. But there's much more work to be done there, something we hope to dive more into in a future episode.
I love that you called out Mojaloop. I think the Gates Foundation, sort of the open standard. I know Google is working very closely with it.
Yeah.
Again, hopefully we see a lot of growth coming out. That is definitely something, Africa in general, something for us to cover in a separate episodes. But coming back to this, like together these up and comers, and I use up and comers, but really are showing that it isn't just an India and Brazil story, right? National rails are spreading fast. But hey, Bob, what about closer to my home?
Well, I mean, it's a bit of a journey, as they say. Let's start with Europe, Zubin. Europe's story is a bit different and already has SEPA Instant, a rule book essentially that allows money to move in seconds across the Eurozone.
Yeah, and kind of want to go back to that framework, right? The problem, SEPA instant credit transfer, or it's just the R in our Rails framework or the RAD framework. What's missing is that user-friendly, i.e., unified front.
And I think that's why the European Payment Initiative, or EPI, is building Wero, or Wero, or Weirdo. I don't know. WERO. It's designed to sit on top of SEPA Instant, much like UPI sits on top of IMPS in India. Wero will provide a universal directory, as Prof. Z explained to you, and a common user experience, not just one country, but across Europe.
Right. So in other words, Europe is trying to build its own number 10, a continental playmaker that could rival the likes of PayPal, Visa, MasterCard, etc.
True. Very true. Now, then you have, Zubin, the outliers, right? In China, Japan, Korea, the national rail model never really sort of landed in these places, but instead, it's not like they don't have a solution. They have private apps that dominate.
Spot on, right? And you look at China, you have sort of WeChat Pay, you have the Alipay, again, effectively the national systems, but privately held, as you mentioned. And then Korea, you have Kakao Pay. In Japan, it's PayPay. These are, in that analogy, the club-owned rails rather than national team jersey.
You are really enjoying this football analogy, I got to say. Look, the outcomes are the same. Instant digital payments at massive scale. But the control sits with private giants, not national infrastructure.
That's right. And, I'll take another outlier since we're talking about outliers. And then there's sort of Russia, right? Like the Mircard network or the SPFS messaging systems. Again, built really in response to sanctions. So I would say they're functional, maybe even defensive, but more survival than innovation.
Correct. And finally, we're back home for you. United States is the world's richest financial market, but strangely, still without a number 10.
Yeah, let's take FedNow, right? Like finally launched, but adoption is sluggish. At Google, we often joke about it as like Fed later, not Fed now. But anyway, I digress again. Let's go back to that framework, right? The US has the R, which is the FedNow, the real-time rails, but it's lacking the A and the D. There's no consistent authentication framework. And more importantly, as of right now, there's no universal directory.
And which is why, Zubin, payments in the US still feels fragmented and clunky compared to the UPIs, Pixes, or even Pay Now here in Singapore.
Yeah, not unless you're a card network. But anyway,
yeah, true.
Where do we go from here, right? Like, I mean, we've sort of talked about this. The holy grail is global interoperability. Now imagine sort of the UPI passing straight to Pix, so Vero, how we want to call it, to FedNow. That's the seamless global payment network that allows people to sort of pay like a local anyway.
Yeah, and we're seeing this already taking shape in Southeast Asia with the Nexus program, which we mentioned, championed by India, Singapore, with Malaysia, Thailand, Indonesia, and more signed up. This is not just an idea, it's real. I can pay for a pad thai, do some shopping, and grab a tuk-tuk with a Singapore bank app while I'm sitting in Thailand using local QR codes. India, by the way, is live too, though It's a little bit more clunky of an experience. It's getting better. And I just tend to use my Google Pay app interoperably thanks to UPI accepting international numbers.
And Amanda, that's again early days, but truly amazing, right? Like,
Yeah.
not just the pad Thai piece of it, but the payment space. The US and
I knew I had you at Pad Thai.
the US, interestingly enough, and we've talked about it, seems to be betting on a very different horse,
Yes.
and that is stablecoins, right? USDC, USDT, PYUSD, or whatever you want to call it. And they're really looking at those as programmable global paymakers. And they're leaning into the sort of private sector, crypto infrastructure to really maintain their financial leadership.
And that really sets up a fascinating split, if you'd like. ASEAN and BRICS nations are leaning on government-backed national rails and tokenized accounts for sovereignty and control, whereas the US and parts of Europe, particularly Western Europe, are exploring stablecoins that leverage their existing financial dominance, I suppose. It's two very different tactics in the same essentially geopolitical chess match.
Yeah, I don't know why you want a chess. We need to keep this in football. Like, feels like the World Cup finals in the making. National rails versus stablecoins. Who's going to win the cup?
Zubin, I have a theory on that.
Oh, of course you do, Aman. Here we go.
So my call is that within 5 years, we'll see a BRICS connectivity. India, Indonesia, Brazil for sure. China and South Africa probably. And Russia, well, subject to political machinations, right? This will almost certainly blend into the Nexus ASEAN efforts. By the time that that's done, Wero, with a bit of luck and newfound conviction in Europe, rather than leverage US standards, will be up and running. This sets up perfectly, Zubin, for a global South payments new order to collaborate potentially with Europe. And some European nations, by the way, like France, who have initiatives already underway, may even jump the gun. This has the potential to be huge. Scale it to B2B payments, and it could reshape global trade flows, reduce costs, and deepen cooperation at a time when that seems like a rare or scarce commodity.
Aman, if I can just pause you, like, we're not just talking about payments here, right? Like, we're talking about payments as geopolitical. And we've talked about this in the past. The next big battle for financial power won't be fought with, I don't know, tanks, or even I would argue tariffs, but rather with APIs and payment protocols.
And you're right, Zubin, and here's the kicker. This effort to build an interoperable payment infrastructure isn't just about making trade easier. It's about creating a parallel financial universe, one where the rules are set by them, not by Washington. This is a real challenge to the stablecoin narrative, which we've highlighted here on the show and is zeitgeist today, but only championed by a handful of countries, including the UK and the US, which need to be careful because they don't want to miss out on this new world order of payments in the making.
Boom. Love it, love it, love it, love it. So there you have it, the number 10s of payments, UPI, PIX, and their teammates shaping the way payments moves around the world.
They've proven that when you build with the right infrastructure, it lifts the entire team. Consumers, businesses, banks, even governments.
And that's the magic of number 10. And let's throw in a Mbappe in there as well, whether it's Mbappe leading the lines for France or UPI moving billions of transactions in 2025.
Zubin, let's hope FedNow doesn't go the way of Pogba. Brilliant on paper, inconsistent on the field.
But before we sign out, a special shout out to our dear, dear, dear friend from Google, TG, who has been really crucial in helping us validate and hypothesize and brainstorm together as we develop this episode. So huge shout out, TG. Thanks a ton.
Yeah, TG's been our CR7 on this episode, delivering perfectly flighted assists of insights that we just tap in.
Perfect. And he's set us up. We've scored.
And on that note, thank you for being with us for episode 10, from Pele to PIX and UPI, how national rails are the real playmakers of payments.
10 episodes in, and just like a great number 10, we're only getting started.
Thanks.